My name is Clarence Everett. I am 62 years old, and I have been driving city buses in Cheyenne, Wyoming for 38 years. Since the death of my wife, Ruth, 8 years ago, I have been living in our old house on Cedar Street with my youngest daughter, Verona. My older son, Dexter, moved to a neighboring town, got married, had children, and lives his own life, as an adult man should. Verona moved back in with me 2 years ago after her divorce and works at a self-service laundromat on the outskirts of town. Our house is solid, 2 stories, built back in the 70s. Ruth used to be very proud of it, especially the kitchen overlooking the backyard, where she grew tomatoes, basil, and parsley in neat rows. That Tuesday was particularly difficult from the very morning. I woke up at 5:30 as usual, had coffee and toast, and read the local newspaper, which reported on the latest scandal in the city council and the new road they were planning to build west of the city. Ruth always laughed at my habit of reading the newspaper at breakfast, saying that the news only spoiled my appetite. Maybe she was right. Most of the news is indeed joyless. All day long, I drove passengers along Route number 7, from the train station to the shopping center on the other side of town. It's a long route across the whole of Cheyenne, with 23 stops and endless traffic jams on the central avenue. The bus is old, red and white, manufactured in 2007. The transmission has been malfunctioning for 6 months, and the air conditioning works intermittently. The fleet management promises a replacement, but promises and reality are two different things. There were all kinds of passengers. In the morning, it was mostly workers heading to the industrial zone, students from the local college, and elderly people who prefer public transportation to their own cars. In the afternoon, there were more women with children and unemployed people running their own errands. In the evening, it was workers again, tired, silent, dreaming only of getting home. Several passengers were particularly memorable that day. In the morning, an elderly man with a cane sat down next to me, an Iraq War veteran, judging by his cap. He talked to me the whole way about his grandson, who had enrolled in the military academy. He was proud of the boy, as could be seen from the way his eyes sparkled. At lunchtime, a group of teenagers sat down, noisy, with music in their headphones that could be heard throughout the bus. Usually this annoys me, but for some reason that day I was indulgent towards them. Youth is youth. The most unpleasant was a middle-aged woman who sat down around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She was fat, sweaty, and carrying a bag stuffed with some kind of purchases. She argued with her husband on the phone the whole way, discussing family problems for the whole bus to hear. She spoke rudely, unattractively, and swore every other word. The other passengers looked at her disapprovingly, but no one said anything. I also kept quiet. It's better for a driver not to get involved in such matters, unless a passenger is threatening safety. By the end of my shift, my back was aching so much that I could barely get out of the driver's seat. 38 years behind the wheel are taking their toll. My spine, knees, shoulders, everything protests against sitting in the same position for hours on end. Dr. Harris, our family doctor, has hinted several times that it's time to think about a lighter job. But what else can I do besides drive a bus? And the pay isn't bad, I have insurance, and I'll get a decent pension if I make it to 65. At the depot, Jerry the mechanic just shook his head as he looked at my old red and white bus. Jerry was a smart guy with golden hands, but even he couldn't work miracles with equipment that had long since served its purpose. "Clarence, it's time to retire this old clunker," he said, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "God only knows how much longer it will last. The engine will soon give out completely, and the air conditioner is already barely working." "What can we do?" I replied. "I drive what they give me. They've been promising new buses for 2 years now." "I know all about promises. They say there's no money left in the budget. Are we supposed to transport people on bicycles?" I just smiled. My bus was no worse off than I was, worn out, but still running. We both deserved a rest, but we were hanging in there for now. I got home around 6:30 in the evening, parked my old gray Ford pickup truck next to the porch, and stretched with relief. It had been a long day, but tomorrow would be a new one, just like today. And the day after tomorrow, too. The house greeted me with its usual silence and the smells of dinner. Verona's work boots were in the hallway, and her jacket was hanging on a coat rack. So she was already home. The TV was on in the living room, showing some news program, but the sound was turned down. Verona didn't like loud noises after work. Washing machines and dryers rumbled all day in the laundry room, so she wanted peace and quiet at home. The house smelled of roast chicken and something else, perhaps mashed potatoes with green onions, as Ruth liked to cook. Verona had adopted many of her mother's cooking habits, although she cooked more simply, without any special frills. She stood at the stove in her work jeans and blue t-shirt with the Clean Start Laundry logo, a washing machine with a smiling face, a rather silly logo, but the laundry owner, Mr. Coleman, thought it was attractive to customers. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, with a few strands falling out and framing her face. Her face showed signs of fatigue. Apparently, she had had a difficult day. Working in a laundry is hard. Washing, drying, ironing, folding laundry, cleaning the premises, working with customers. The pay was low, but Verona was grateful for that too. After her divorce from Kyle, she had to start all over again. She turned around when she heard me hang my keys on the hook by the door, an old habit Ruth had instilled in me. Keys should always be in their place, or she used to say. Otherwise, you'll spend half the day looking for them all over the house. Hi, Dad. How was your shift? Same as usual. The bus is barely running, the passengers are annoying, and the bosses promise new vehicles by the end of the year. How were things at the laundry? She shrugged and turned the chicken pieces in the pan. The oil sizzled and splattered, filling the kitchen with appetizing smells. Potatoes were also cooking on the stove, and there was a bowl of tomato and cucumber salad on the table. Fine. Mr. Coleman was complaining about the powder suppliers again, saying the quality has gone down and the prices are going up. The big dryer broke down and the repairman won't be here until tomorrow. I had to explain to the customers why their clothes would be ready later. Verona had never been very talkative, especially after her divorce from that jerk Kyle, who had left her for some girl from Denver. Kyle worked as a salesman at a car dealership and considered himself a great connoisseur of life, but in reality he was just a womanizer. When he found out that his new girlfriend was pregnant, he left Verona and moved to Denver to be with her. Of course, he doesn't pay child support. Taking him to court is expensive and troublesome. But that evening, there was something different about her. A kind of liveliness that I hadn't seen in months. Her movements became more energetic, her eyes sparkled, and her lips stretched into a small smile every now and then. It was as if a light bulb had been turned on inside her that hadn't been lit for a long time. We sat down to dinner at the old dark oak kitchen table that remembered Ruth's time. She had bought it at an antique store in Denver when we were newlyweds. The table was heavy and solid, with deep knife marks and stains from hot pots, but it was still sturdy. Furniture should last forever, Ruth used to say, unlike modern plywood, which falls apart after a couple of years. Verona arranged the food on plates, blue ones with a small floral pattern from the set Ruth had left behind. She poured me coffee from an old coffee maker and herself some iced tea from a large glass jar she always kept in the refrigerator. It's hot in Wyoming in the summer, so you don't really feel like drinking hot drinks. We ate in silence for a while, as usual. The chicken turned out well, golden brown, juicy with a crispy crust. The mashed potatoes were fluffy, with pieces of green onion and butter. The salad was fresh, the tomatoes sweet, probably local from the Johnson's farm outside of town. I told her about the latest problems with the bus, about the passengers, about the promises made by management regarding new equipment. She told me about the broken dryer in the laundry room, which a repairman from Laramie had been working on all day. The guy was young but smart, quickly found the problem, and ordered the necessary part. However, the part would only arrive in a week, and in the meantime, they had to work with 3 machines instead of 4. The customers are unhappy, she said, sipping her tea, especially Mrs. Thompson. She brought her sheets and tablecloths and wanted to pick them up tomorrow when her relatives arrive. I had to explain that appliances don't break down on schedule. What did she say? That she'll go to another laundry, but there are only 2 other laundries in town, and the lines there are even longer than ours. We continued to eat and talk about everyday matters. I mentioned the new driver they had hired for route number 3, a young guy who had recently moved from Montana and seemed to be quite capable. She told me about a new employee at the laundry, a girl named Skylar from the local reservation, who turned out to be very responsible and a quick learner. She's a smart girl, Verona said. She wants to go to college to study accounting, And while she's working for us, she's saving money for her education. Mr. Coleman is pleased with her and says that employees like her are rare. That's good. Young people need help if they want to study. After the main course, Verona brought out the apple pie she had baked the day before. The pie turned out almost like Ruth's. The crust was crumbly, the apples were sweet with a hint of tartness, and the cinnamon was just right. Verona learned to cook from her mother, although not right away. As a teenager, she was more interested in friends and music than cooking. "Dad," she said suddenly, putting down her fork, "I wanted to tell you something." I looked up from my plate. There was a hint of hesitation in her voice, as if she had been thinking about these words all day. But at the same time, I could hear excitement, even joy. "I'm listening." "I'm seeing a guy," she continued, not looking at me, playing with the pie crumbs on her plate. "His name is Braden, Braden Ripple." The name didn't ring a bell, which wasn't surprising. Cheyenne isn't that big of a city, about 60,000 people, but it's not so small that you know everyone by name, especially young people. They come and go, change jobs, move from apartment to apartment. "How long have you known each other?" I asked, trying to sound calm and interested, not like a father checking up on his daughter. "A few weeks. We met at the Hunter's Corner when I was there with Christy and Emma from the laundry. The girls decided to celebrate Christy's birthday and invited me along. The Hunter's Corner is a local bar on Main Street, not the worst place, but not the best either. It's a mid-range establishment where workers go after their shift, young people on weekends, and sometimes families for dinner. The food there is pretty good, especially the burgers and steaks. The beer is fresh, and the atmosphere is friendly. I had been there a couple of times with Orville, my old friend who loved their bacon burgers and French fries. "How is he?" Verona finally looked at me, and I saw something like happiness in her eyes. I hadn't seen her like that in a long time. Her eyes were shining, her cheeks were slightly flushed, and her lips were stretched into a shy smile. After her divorce from Kyle, she was depressed, withdrawn, and rarely smiled. But now she seemed to have come alive. "He's nice, Dad. He's cheerful, attentive, and caring. We have a good time together. He's interested in my work, asks about you, about the family, not like Kyle, who only talked about himself." "What does he do?" "Where does he work?" "He's looking for a job right now. He used to work in construction, but the project ended and the company laid off some of its employees. An unemployed builder then." "That's not surprising. Construction in Wyoming is seasonal, and many people are out of work in the winter. But it's already July, the height of the construction season, so it's strange that he hasn't found anything yet. Although maybe he's just picky or looking for something specific." "How old is he?" 26, 2 years younger than her. "Not a big deal. The difference is small. Although after her divorce from Kyle, I hoped she would find someone more serious, more mature, with a stable job and clear plans for the future. But Verona is a grown woman, 28 years old, and she has the right to make her own choices. My job is to support her, not control her." "Where is he from?" "Is he local?" "Yes, he grew up here in Cheyenne. He graduated from the same school as me, just a few years later. It's strange that we never met before, but that sometimes happens in big schools." I nodded. There were over 1,000 children in the city school, so it was quite possible not to cross paths, especially if there was a few years difference in age. "I'll introduce you sometime," she added hopefully. "I think you'll like him. He respects his elders. He's polite, well-mannered." "Of course we will. It would be interesting to meet the man who made my daughter happy." Verona smiled more broadly, and I knew I had said the right thing. My approval was important to her, even though she hadn't asked for it directly. After her failed marriage to Kyle, she had become more cautious in relationships, but at the same time, she needed her family's support more than ever. The conversation smoothly moved on to other topics. She told me more about Skylar, a new employee from the reservation. It turned out that the girl was not only responsible, but also very smart, quickly mastering all the intricacies of working with different fabrics and stains. "Mr. Coleman is even thinking of raising her salary in a month, which is rare for him." I shared some news from work. There was talk that the city authorities had finally decided to renew the bus fleet and purchase 5 new vehicles by the end of the year. This was good news for us drivers, but bad news for taxpayers' wallets. A new bus cost more than $300,000, and 5 vehicles is a lot of money for the city budget. Maybe you'll get one of the new ones, Verona asked. Maybe. I'm third in line in terms of seniority, so there's a chance. Although, you know how it is. They promise a lot, but the reality is different. After dinner, Verona washed the dishes. It was my turn tomorrow. Then she went upstairs saying she wanted to watch a TV series on her laptop and go to bed early. Tomorrow was going to be a tough day at work. A large shipment of laundry was due to arrive from the Fairfield Hotel, as the guests were leaving after some kind of conference. I sat down in the living room in front of the TV and turned on the news. It was the usual stuff. Politicians arguing in Washington, something exploding somewhere in the Middle East. The economy either growing or falling. Experts arguing. In sports, the local baseball team lost to the Denver team. But that was no surprise. The Denver guys always played better. Boring. I turned off the TV and tried to read the newspaper, but it had the same news as the TV, only less recent. I looked at my watch. It was 8:45, too early to go to bed. I decided to walk to Dolly's Diner, where Orville was surely sitting with a mug of beer and a slice of apple pie. Thursday turned out to be an unusually good day. The bus ran smoothly, the air conditioning worked properly, and the passengers were calm and polite. Even the traffic jams on Central Avenue seemed to have disappeared on their own. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had finished all my trips and decided to take advantage of the rare opportunity to go home early. Usually my shift ended at 6:30, but on that day, dispatcher Carl Miller said that the last trip was canceled due to low passenger numbers. In the summer, people travel less on weekdays. Many are on vacation, children are not in school, and some people prefer to walk when the weather is nice. For the fleet, this means fuel savings. For me, it means an unexpectedly free evening. After parking my pickup truck at home, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway, an old blue Chevrolet sedan from 2005 or 2006, with a dented rear bumper and a scratch along the left door. The license plate was local, but I had never seen the car before. So Verona has guests, I thought, most likely one of her friends from work. As I climbed the porch steps, I heard quiet voices and soft music coming through the slightly open living room window. Verona rarely played music, only when she was in a particularly good mood. I unlocked the front door and was about to announce my return, but stopped when I saw the scene in the living room. Verona was sitting on our old brown sofa next to an unfamiliar man. They were kissing, not passionately, but tenderly, in a familiar way. His hand was on her shoulder, her hand was resting on his chest. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice my arrival. I coughed softly and they jerked away from each other. Verona blushed and the man looked embarrassed but not frightened. He got up from the sofa and squared his shoulders, as if preparing to introduce himself. "Dad, you're early today," Verona said, trying to sound normal, but her voice betrayed her trembling. "This is Braden." Braden Ripple. "Remember I told you about him?" I remembered our conversation at dinner 2 days ago. So this was the guy she had been dating for several weeks. The young man held out his hand to shake mine. "Mr. Everett, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Verona has told me a lot about you." His handshake was firm but not overly strong. Braden looked his 26 years. Of average height, athletic build, dark hair cut short, brown eyes. He was dressed simply but neatly. Jeans, plaid shirt, sneakers. Nothing special, just a regular young man. "Likewise," I replied. "Verona said you're looking for a job in construction." "Yes, sir. The job market is tough right now, but I'm sure I'll find something suitable soon." He called me sir, which suggested he was trying to make a good impression. Some people might find that flattering, but it made me wary. It was too polite for a guy who had just been kissing my daughter on my couch. "Have a seat," I said, pointing to the chair across from the couch. "Verona, would you make some tea?" "Sure, Dad." She hurried to the kitchen, leaving us alone. Braden sat down in the chair, crossed his arms over his chest, and looked at me intently. I settled into my usual chair, where I could see his face clearly. "So, construction," I began. "What do you specialize in? Concrete, carpentry, electrical work?" "A little bit of everything. I've worked on different projects, residential buildings, commercial buildings, renovations. I like variety." An evasive answer. An experienced builder usually has a clear specialization, and a little bit of everything often means that the person hasn't really stayed anywhere for very long. Where did you work last? At Rocky Mountain Construction. We were building a shopping center outside the city, but the project was shut down due to financing problems. I knew the company by reputation, a medium-sized firm that took on contracts throughout the state. But as far as I could remember, they hadn't built any large shopping centers recently. Although I could be wrong, I'm not familiar with the construction business. How long did you work there? About 8 months. It was a good team. It's a shame it all fell apart. Verona returned with a tray, a teapot, 3 cups, sugar, cookies. She poured the tea, sat down next to Braden and took his hand. The gesture was natural, but I noticed him tense slightly. Braden told me about his work, she said. He has a lot of experience in construction. That's good, I replied neutrally. What are your plans? Do you want to stay in Cheyenne or move somewhere else? I don't know yet. It depends on where I can find a good job. But I like this city. I like the people here. He looked at Verona, and she smiled back at him. There was definitely a connection between them. It was obvious to the naked eye. But something about his manner, his answers to my questions, bothered me. He spoke too cautiously, too deliberately. Do you have a family? Parents, brothers, sisters? My parents died a few years ago. Car accident. No brothers or sisters, so I'm on my own now. Verona squeezed his hand sympathetically. A sad story, if true. Being an orphan would explain his reticence and caution in communication. My condolences, I said sincerely. It's hard to be alone. Thank you, but life goes on. You have to move on. We talked a little more about this and that. The weather, the city, local attractions. Braden responded politely but without much enthusiasm. It seemed as if he was fulfilling an unpleasant but necessary duty. Around 5:30, he said it was time for him to leave. Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. Everett. I hope we'll see each other again. Of course, I replied. Come by whenever you have time. Verona walked him to his car. I watched from the window as they talked by the blue sedan, as he kissed her goodbye, as he got behind the wheel and drove away. The car ran unevenly, blue smoke coming from the exhaust pipe. When she returned to the house, Verona looked happy, but at the same time a little worried. Well, did you like him? I didn't want to spoil her mood, but I wasn't going to lie either. He seems like a nice guy, polite, well-mannered. But, no buts. I just need time to get to know him better. She nodded, but I could see from her face that my answer didn't quite satisfy her. She wanted to hear more enthusiasm, more ardent approval. The next day was Friday, a working day like any other. The bus was acting up again, the air conditioning was working at half strength, and the passengers were complaining about the heat. But my thoughts were not occupied with work, but with yesterday's acquaintance with Braden. Something about him made me wary, but I couldn't put my finger on it. On Friday evening, Verona went on a date with Braden. To the movies, she said. She came back late, around midnight, happy and talkative. She talked about the movie, the restaurant where they had dinner, and their plans for the weekend. I listened, happy for her, but I couldn't shake my uneasiness. Saturday passed quietly. I did some chores around the house, mowed the lawn, fixed a leaky faucet in the kitchen, washed the car. Verona worked until lunchtime, then met up with her friends, and in the evening she was with Braden again. She came home even later than on Friday. Sunday began with a phone call from Dexter. My eldest son called early in the morning and said he wanted to come over with his family for lunch. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. I was delighted. Dexter, his wife Melissa, and their 2 children visited us no more than once a month. They had their own life in Laramie. Dexter worked as a railroad mechanic, a good, stable job with a decent salary and benefits. 5 years ago, he married Melissa, a nurse at the local hospital. They had 2 children, Jacob 7 and Emily 4. They lived in their own house on the outskirts of Laramie, half an hour's drive from Cheyenne. Dexter was the complete opposite of Verona, practical, level-headed, not prone to impulsive decisions. He did well in school, stayed out of trouble, and decided on a career early on. After the Army, he worked as an assistant mechanic for a year, then enrolled in technical college and earned a degree. He married thoughtfully to a girl he had known for 2 years. At first, Verona didn't want to attend the family dinner. I have plans with Braden, she said at breakfast. Maybe you could invite him too, I suggested. Dexter can meet him. She paused, considering the proposal. I don't know, Dad. It's too early. It's better if Dexter hears about him from me first. I didn't insist. She was right. Meeting the family was a serious step, and there was no need to rush it. Dexter and his family arrived around noon. The kids immediately ran out into the yard to explore the area they remembered from their last visit. Melissa helped Verona in the kitchen, while the men sat in the living room with beer. Dexter looked good, tanned, muscular, with a little gray at the temples, but it gave him a dignified look. At 31, he was an accomplished man with clear priorities in life. How's work? I asked. Not bad. The railroad is a stable industry. People and cargo will always travel by train. My bosses are promising a raise by the end of the year if everything goes well. What about home? The farm? Everything's fine. I repaired the roof last summer, so now it doesn't leak. I put up a new fence, so it's safer for the kids to play in the yard. Melissa planted a garden and is growing vegetables. We talked about his work, the kids, and vacation plans. Then I decided to tell him the news in our family. Verona is dating a guy, I said casually. Dexter raised his eyebrows. He knew about his sister's divorce and how hard it was for her to get over Kyle. Really? What's he like? He's young, 26. His name is Braden Ripple. He says he used to work in construction, but now he's looking for a new job. Is he local? Yes, from Cheyenne. I met him yesterday. He seems like a decent guy, but I'm not sure. Something about him bothers me. He's evasive when I ask questions, doesn't give me any specifics, and he's been unemployed for several months, and summer is the best time for construction. Dexter took a thoughtful sip of beer. He was always cautious in his assessments of people, never rushing to conclusions. What does Verona say? She's head over heels in love. She says he's caring, attentive, and cheerful. Maybe I'm worrying for nothing. Maybe, but it doesn't hurt to be cautious. After Kyle, she became more trusting, wanting to believe in the best. But a man should have a job, goals, plans for the future. That's what I think. Do you want me to find out about him? I have friends in construction companies I can ask around. Not yet. After all, they've only known each other for a few weeks. If the relationship becomes serious, then we'll see. Lunch was fun and noisy. The children talked about school, friends, and plans for the summer holidays. Melissa shared news from work and complained about the shortage of staff at the hospital. Verona talked about the laundry and her new employee, Skylar, who turned out to be very capable. After lunch, the children went to play in the yard under Melissa's supervision. Dexter helped me clear the table, and Verona washed the dishes. The three of us stayed in the kitchen. Verona, Dad told me you have a boyfriend, Dexter said. She blushed but smiled. Yes, his name is Braden. He's a very nice person. Is it a serious relationship? It's too early to say. But I feel good with him, comfortable. After Kyle, I thought I would never be able to trust anyone again. But with Braden, it's different. That's great, Dexter said sincerely. You deserve to be happy. Just be careful, don't rush into any serious decisions. I'm an adult, Dex. I can decide for myself who I date. Of course you can, but we're family. We have a right to worry about you. Verona nodded, but her face showed that she didn't like the subject. She didn't like her personal life being discussed, even with the best of intentions. Dexter's family left around 5 in the evening. The children were tired and needed to go to bed early. They had school tomorrow. As he was leaving, Dexter said quietly to me, "If anything serious happens with this Braden, call me right away." "We'll figure it out together," I shook his hand, grateful for his support. It's good to have someone to rely on in difficult times. In the evening, after dinner, I decided to talk to Verona openly. We sat on the back porch, drinking iced tea and enjoying the cool air. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Verona," I began cautiously, "I want to talk to you about Braden." She tensed up and put her glass down on the table. "Dad, we already discussed everything yesterday." "Not quite. I want you to know that I'm glad you're happy again. After your divorce from Kyle, you were very depressed, and it hurt me to see you like that." "Thank you, Dad. But at the same time, I'm worried. You've only known this guy for a few weeks. Maybe you should take it slow and get to know him better. What do I need to know? He's a good man, kind and caring. I feel comfortable and at ease with him. But he doesn't have a job. How is he going to provide for a family if the relationship becomes serious? Verona stood up and paced the porch. Dad, not everything can be measured in money. Kyle made good money, but he was selfish and a liar. Braden may not be rich, but he's honest and sincere. I'm not talking about wealth, but a man should be able to support himself and his family. That's the basis. He'll find a job. It's just a difficult time for construction right now. Maybe, but why is he so evasive when I ask him questions? Where exactly did he work? What exactly did he do? Verona stopped and turned to me. Dad, you interrogated him like a criminal. Of course he was embarrassed. I asked the usual questions that any father would ask when meeting his daughter's boyfriend. Maybe we should give him time to settle in, to get used to us. I sighed. She was in love, and people in love rarely listen to reason. Okay, but promise me, if anything about his behavior seems strange to you, if you feel unsure, tell me right away. Dad, I love him, she said quietly but firmly. It may sound silly, but I understand it with all my heart. He's the one I've been waiting for my whole life. The words hit me like a bucket of cold water. Love. She was talking about love after only a few weeks of dating. It was dangerous. Verona. No, Dad. I know what you're going to say. That it's too soon. That I need time. That after Kyle, I should be more careful. But you can't fool your heart. I love him, and he loves me. Has he told you that? Not with words. But I see it in his eyes. I feel it in the way he treats me. I realized it was useless to argue. When a woman is in love, she doesn't listen to reason. All that's left is to wait and hope that everything will work out. All right, I said softly. If you're happy, then I'm happy. I just ask you not to make any rash decisions. Love is good, but life isn't just about feelings. I understand, Dad, and I appreciate your concern. But please let me figure out my relationship on my own. Don't interfere unless I ask for help. I nodded, though I felt uneasy. Verona was a grown woman and had the right to make her own choices. But my father's heart sensed danger, even if my mind couldn't identify it. That evening, lying in bed with a book, I thought about my conversation with my daughter. Maybe I was being too suspicious. Maybe Braden was just a normal guy who had gotten himself into a difficult situation at work. Time would tell. But I decided to keep a close eye on developments. Monday began as usual, up at 5:30, coffee and toast, watching the morning news. Outside the window, a light rain was falling, which is rare for Wyoming in July. Usually it's dry and hot here in the summer, but nature sometimes presents surprises. The rain meant there would be more passengers. People don't like getting wet, so they prefer public transportation. I arrived at the depot at 7 in the morning, as usual. My old red and white bus was in its usual spot, and Jerry the mechanic was already working on another bus's engine. He waved at me and shouted something about changing the oil, but I couldn't hear him over the noise of the engines running. A pre-trip inspection showed that the bus was in good condition. The brakes were working, the steering was tight, and the tires were fine. As usual, the air conditioning was only working at half strength, but that wasn't a big deal on a rainy day. Passengers are more likely to freeze than suffer from the heat. The first trip went smoothly. People got on wet and unhappy with the weather, but they were quiet. The bus smelled of dampness and wet clothes. At the final stop at the shopping center, I got out to stretch my legs and bought a hot coffee and a ham sandwich at a kiosk. The second trip also went without incident. By lunchtime, the rain had almost stopped. The sun came out and the passengers' mood improved. The children who were traveling with their mothers to go shopping were no longer whining, but were looking out the windows at the wet streets with interest. After lunch, dispatcher Carl Miller asked me to come up to the office. I had to fill out some insurance paperwork. The office was on the second floor of the depot's administrative building, and to get there, I had to climb an old metal staircase, which, according to the bosses, had been scheduled for replacement for about 5 years. The staircase was steep, the steps were narrow, and the railing had peeling paint. In rainy weather, the metal became slippery, but I usually climb carefully, holding on to the handrail. That day, I was also taking my time, but something went wrong. On the seventh or eighth step, the sole of my work boot slipped on the wet metal. I tried to grab the railing, but my right hand slipped and I lost my balance. The fall lasted seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. I had time to think that it was stupid to fall down the stairs at 62, like a clumsy teenager. I landed badly with my right hand outstretched, my whole weight on my wrist. I heard the bone crunch immediately, and then a wave of nauseating pain washed over me. My hand was hanging at an unnatural angle, my fingers unresponsive. "Clarence! What happened?" Jerry was the first to come running at the sound. "I think I broke my arm," I said, trying not to show how much it hurt. "Don't move. I'll call an ambulance." The next half hour passed in a blur. The medics arrived, immobilized my arm, gave me painkillers, and took me to the city hospital. In the emergency room, the doctor on duty, a young man of about 30, examined my arm and sent me for an x-ray. "It's a fracture of the radius," he said, studying the images. "It's quite serious. You'll need a cast for about 6 weeks. You may need surgery, but let's see how the bone heals first." While they were putting the cast on, I asked the nurse to call Verona at work. I explained the situation, asked her not to worry, and told her that my life was not in danger. She rushed to the hospital an hour later, pale and frightened. "Dad, how are you feeling?" "What did the doctors say?" "It's broken, but not critically. 6 weeks in a cast, and everything will be fine." Thank God. I was so scared when they called me from the depot. We drove home in her small car, an old red Honda she bought after her divorce. The ride was uncomfortable. His right arm in a cast made it difficult to fasten his seatbelt, and every movement was painful, despite the painkillers. "Maybe I should take a week off," Verona suggested, "to take care of you." "No need. I can manage. It's my arm that's broken, not my leg. But it will be hard for you to do everything with one hand. I'll learn. The main thing is that I can't drive the bus until I'm better. It's good that I have insurance at home." She helped me settle into my chair, made tea, and prepared a light dinner. I felt helpless. I couldn't really eat or drink, and even holding a book was difficult. I'd been right-handed all my life, and now I had to learn to do everything with my left hand. Braden arrived in the evening. Verona must have called him and told him about my accident. He expressed his sympathy and offered his help. "If you need anything, to carry something heavy, fix your car, let me know, Mr. Everett." "Thank you," I replied, although I wasn't used to accepting help from strangers. Braden stayed for dinner. Verona cooked, and he set the table, poured water, and helped me cut the meat. It was awkward. A grown man who couldn't even feed himself properly. But Braden was tactful and didn't show that he noticed my helplessness. "What do the doctors say?" he asked. "Will it heal quickly?" "About 6 weeks in a cast. I'm not as young as I used to be, so my bones heal more slowly." "It's okay. The main thing is that I didn't need surgery. My uncle also broke his arm and wore a cast, but then it got even better than before the fracture." After dinner, they sat in the living room watching some movie. I went upstairs to my room. Climbing the stairs with one arm was more difficult than I thought. I had to go slowly, step by step, holding the railing with my left hand. The following days merged into a monotonous sequence. I woke up, ate breakfast with my left hand, read, watched TV, and dozed in an armchair. Verona left for work, returned for dinner, cooked, and cleaned. In the evenings, Braden would come over, at first for a short time, then for longer and longer. By the end of the week, I noticed that he was acting more freely. He didn't ask permission to open the refrigerator. He turned on the TV himself, changed channels. He sat in my chair when I was in the kitchen. Small things, but they added up. "Braden is a great help," Verona said when I cautiously hinted at this. "He can see that you're having a hard time, so he's trying to make your life easier." Maybe she was right. Maybe I just wasn't used to having strangers in the house. After Ruth's death, only relatives in Orville visited occasionally, and now there was a young man who felt at home here. On Friday evening, exactly 1 week after the fall, a conversation took place that changed everything. Braden left earlier than usual, saying he was meeting a friend. Verona and I were left alone, sitting in the kitchen drinking tea. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "I wanted to talk to you about something." From her tone, I knew it was going to be something serious. "I'm listening." "The thing is, after your fall, I've been thinking a lot. What if it had been more serious? What if you had been seriously injured and ended up in intensive care? But nothing serious happened. Not this time, but next time it could be worse. You're not young anymore, Dad. Your job is hard and stressful. I didn't understand what she was getting at, but I sensed something was up. What are you suggesting? I think we need to better protect your property, your house, your car, your savings. If something happens to you, if you need expensive treatment, the hospital may seize your property. I have insurance. Insurance doesn't cover everything. And medicine is expensive these days, especially if you need surgery or rehabilitation. I began to understand where this was going. What are you suggesting? Transfer the house to me. Formally. You'll live here as usual, but legally I'll be the owner. Then the hospital won't be able to take the house for debts. The proposal stunned me. The house was Ruth and my main achievement, the result of 30 years of living together. We bought it when we were young, paid off the mortgage in 25 years, and put our hearts and souls into every renovation. Verona, this is a serious decision. We need to think it through carefully. I've already thought it through. I've been thinking about it for over a week. This is the only way to protect your property. What about Dexter? He's your brother too. He has a right to inherit. We'll work something out with him. The main thing right now is to secure the house. I felt that something was wrong here. Too hasty, too insistent. I need time to think. There's no time, Dad. The longer we wait, the greater the risk. If something happens to you tomorrow, it will be too late. But nothing has happened to me yet. My hand will heal, and everything will be as before. What about next time? You see how quickly things can change. The next morning, on Saturday, Verona brought me breakfast in bed, which she had never done before. Oatmeal, toast, coffee, fresh orange juice. She was unusually attentive, asking how I was feeling and offering to help. Dad, I spoke to a lawyer yesterday, she said when I had finished breakfast. He said that transferring property within the family is a common practice to protect against medical debts. Which lawyer? A friend of Braden's. He specializes in family law, Braden again. Somehow he had become involved in our family affairs. What did he advise? To draw up a deed of gift as soon as possible. He says there's a special procedure, and it can all be done quickly and inexpensively. Verona, let's not rush into anything. I want to talk to a lawyer myself and explore all the options. But why waste time? My friend has already figured everything out and even brought the forms she took, several sheets of paper folded in half, out of her purse. Here, you just need to sign. He said it could be done right at home. No need to go to a notary. I reached out my left hand for the papers, but she pulled them away. Be careful, Dad. There are several copies. You might crumple them. Let me read them. It's all standard stuff. A regular gift form. You trust me, don't you? It's not about trust. I want to understand what I'm signing. But you're right-handed and your hand is in a cast. It's uncomfortable for you to hold the papers. Put them on the table. I'll read them. Verona hesitated, but finally laid the documents out on the bedside table. I tried to read, but it was awkward to turn the pages with my left hand, and the text was printed in small font. Give me my glasses, I asked. Dad, trust me. Everything is fine. It's just a standard transfer of ownership from father to daughter. I want to read every word myself, but you can only sign with your left hand. It will look messy. I'll learn. The main thing is to understand what's written in the documents. Verona gathered the papers and put them back in her purse. Okay, Dad, but let's not drag it out too long. The lawyer said it's better to get these documents done quickly. Why quickly? Well, the laws may change. The procedure may become more complicated. It's better to do it now, while everything is still simple. The explanation didn't seem convincing to me. Laws on inheritance and gifts don't change every month. But I didn't argue. My head hurt from the painkillers, and it was difficult to think. Braden arrived in the afternoon. Verona must have told him about our conversation, because he also talked about the need to protect the property. Mr. Everett, I told you, if you need anything, let me know. My help extends to legal matters as well. I have a lawyer friend who is very knowledgeable. The one who brought the documents? Yes, Richard Stone. We went to school together. He's a good specialist. Why can't he come here and explain everything in person? He's very busy, but if you want, I can arrange a meeting. I want that. Braden exchanged glances with Verona. Of course, Mr. Everett, but it will take time, and time is working against us right now. Against us? Well, against your safety. The longer the house remains in your name, the greater the risk of losing it if there are problems. The conversation was becoming more and more insistent. I felt pressure, even though both Verona and Braden spoke softly and kindly. Let's put this off until Monday, I said. My hand hurts, and it's hard to think. Of course, Dad, Verona agreed. Get some rest. But I could see the disappointment on her face. Apparently, they were counting on getting my signature today. That night, I lay in bed and thought about my daughter's strange proposal. On the one hand, there was logic in her words. Medical bills could indeed ruin a family. On the other hand, why the rush? And why didn't she want to show me the documents? Maybe my suspicions were unfounded. Maybe Verona really did care about my safety. But then why was Braden involved? Why was he the one she knew, and not my family lawyer? There were many questions and few answers. I decided that on Monday I would definitely talk to Orville. He always had a clear head and would help me figure things out. As I fell asleep, I remembered Dexter's words. If anything serious happens to this Braden, call me right away. Maybe it was time to call. Monday began with rain and a headache. The painkillers the doctor prescribed helped with my arm, but they had unpleasant side effects. Nausea, dizziness, sluggishness. I slept poorly, tossing and turning all night, trying to find a comfortable position for my broken arm. Verona left for work early, around 6:30. Before leaving, she brought me breakfast in bed. Oatmeal with raisins, toast with butter, coffee. She was caring, but I noticed impatience in her eyes, as if she were waiting for something important. How's your arm, Dad? Does it hurt a lot? It's bearable. The doctor said the first 2 weeks are the hardest. Maybe we should go see that lawyer today. Richard Stone is free after lunch. Another lawyer, more paperwork. I hadn't even finished breakfast, and she was already pressuring me. Verona, we agreed yesterday to wait until Monday. Today is Monday, but I'm not ready to make a decision yet. But the longer we wait, the more time I'll have to think it over, I finished firmly. Don't rush me. She sighed, kissed me on the forehead, and left. I was left alone with heavy thoughts and a growing suspicion that my daughter was hiding something. After breakfast, I tried to read the newspaper, but it was awkward to turn the pages with my left hand. I turned on the TV, but the morning programs were just annoying. Meaningless chatter from the hosts, commercials for medicines and insurance. I turned it off and sat down in a chair by the window, watching the occasional passers-by on our quiet street. Around 10 in the morning, I decided to call Orville. My old friend worked as a night watchman, so he should be at home resting now. I dialed his number with my left hand. It didn't work right away. I had to dial the number slowly and carefully. Clarence? Orville's voice sounded sleepy. How's it going, old man? How's your hand? My hand is healing. Orville, I need to talk to you. Seriously talk. What's wrong? I don't want to talk on the phone. Can you come by this afternoon? Sure, I'll come by around 2 once I'm fully awake. Thanks. And Orville, don't tell anyone I called you. There was a note of concern in my friend's voice. Clarence, you're scaring me. Is everything okay? I don't know yet. We'll talk this afternoon. The time before Orville arrived dragged on agonizingly. I paced around the house trying to do things with my left hand, but everything fell out of my fingers. I couldn't even make tea properly. The kettle is heavy, and you can't hold it with one hand. At 1:30, I heard a knock on the back door, the one that led to the yard. Orville always came in through the back door. It was more convenient and familiar that way. I opened the door and let my friend into the kitchen. Orville looked worried. His gray hair was tousled, his eyes red from lack of sleep, and he was dressed in old jeans and a faded shirt. But his gaze was sharp and attentive. Years of working as a security guard had taught him to notice details. Sit down, I said. I'll make some tea. Let me do it. You'll have a hard time with one hand? Orville made tea and took some cookies out of the refrigerator that Verona had left. We sat down at the kitchen table, and I began my story. Remember when I told you about Braden, my daughter's boyfriend? Of course I remember. An unemployed construction worker. You had your doubts about him at the time. Well, after my fall, he started coming to the house more often. He's been acting strange. How strange. Too free. As if it were his house, not mine. He opens the refrigerator without asking, changes the TV channels, sits in my chair. Orville frowned and took a sip of tea. Maybe he's just inexperienced in social situations? Young people sometimes don't understand boundaries. Maybe, but there's something else. Verona is offering to transfer the house into her name. What? Orville almost choked on his tea. Why? She says it's to protect against medical debts. She says that if something happens to me, the hospital can seize the property. Clarence, that's complete nonsense. You have insurance, it covers most of the costs. And for the rest, there are government programs. I think so too. But she insists, says there's no time, everything needs to be done urgently. Did she show you the documents? She brought some papers, but she wouldn't let me read them. She says it's all standard, a normal deed of gift. Orville shook his head. Clarence, this reeks of a scam a mile away. No one refuses to show the documents if everything is above board. That's what I think. But she's my daughter. How can I suspect her? Is this Braden involved in the deal? You bet. He brought in a lawyer friend who brought the documents. He also insists on urgency, Orville thought for a moment, drumming his fingers on the table. Listen, where are the documents now? With Verona. In her room, probably. Can you get them? Why? I have a cousin, Merritt. He's a notary and has been working for 30 years. If we show him these papers, he'll tell us right away what's what. The idea seemed reasonable to me. A professional notary would understand the documents better than I would. But how can we get them? Verona hides them. Where is she now? At work. She won't be back before 6, so we have time. Let's try to find them. We went up to Verona's room on the second floor. I hadn't been there in a long time. After the divorce, my daughter had set up her own personal space, and I didn't intrude without an invitation. The room was tidy, but personal items were scattered everywhere. Cosmetics on the dressing table, clothes on a chair, books and magazines on the nightstand. Orville methodically searched the desk, while I tried to peek into the closet with one hand. The documents were found quickly. In the top drawer of the desk, under a stack of old letters, several sheets of official-looking paper fastened with a paper clip. Here they are, Orville said, taking the documents. Let's go to Merritt's right now. What if Verona notices? We'll take a picture with our phone and put them back. She won't notice. Orville took out his old smartphone and took pictures of each page. The quality wasn't perfect, but the text was legible. Then we carefully put the documents back in their place. Let's go to Merritt, Orville said. If this is a scam, it's better to find out now than when it's too late. Merritt Hutchins' office was located in the business center of the city, on the third floor of an old brick building. It was a small office with 2 rooms, a reception area and a study. The secretary, a middle-aged woman with gray hair, recognized Orville and immediately showed us to the notary. Merritt was older than Orville, about 64, tall, thin, with a neat gray beard. He was dressed conservatively in a dark suit, white shirt, and blue tie. Behind him on the wall hung diplomas and certificates, and on the table stood a family photograph. Orville, what brings you here? Merritt rose from the table, shook hands with his cousin, then with me. And this must be Clarence, whom you've told me about. Yes, he's my best friend. Merritt, we have a delicate request for you. We sat down in comfortable leather chairs in front of the notary's desk. Orville quickly explained the situation and showed photos of the documents on his phone. Merritt listened attentively, nodding occasionally. I see. Let's take a look at these papers. He took the phone, turned on the desk lamp, and began to study the photos. His face grew increasingly serious. After a few minutes, he put the phone down and looked at me. Clarence, I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? It is indeed a real estate gift agreement, but the recipient listed in it is not your daughter. Not my daughter? Then who is it? Braden Daniel Ripple. According to the document, you are transferring to him, free of charge, the ownership of the house located at, he gave our address. All real estate is transferred to him completely and unconditionally. I felt the blood drain from my face. So Verona had lied. So they were going to rob me with the help of my own daughter. That's not all, Merritt continued. While you were here, I decided to check this Braden guy in the database. He has a criminal record. What kind of criminal record? Fraud. 3 years ago, he defrauded an elderly woman in Casper, convincing her to invest money in a non-existent business. He received a 2-year suspended sentence and a fine. Oh my God, Orville whispered. There are also several civil lawsuits from creditors. This man is a professional con artist. I sat silently, digesting the information. My daughter, my own daughter, had tried to steal my house. For some crook she had known for only a few weeks. Merritt, if I sign these documents, will I be able to cancel the deal later? Theoretically, yes, if you can prove that you signed under duress or while incapacitated. But in practice, it's very difficult and expensive. It's better not to sign at all. What should I do about my daughter? That's no longer a legal issue, but a family one. But I advise you to be careful. If they've gone this far, they may try to force you to sign. We thanked Merritt and left the office. Outside, I stopped and leaned against the wall. My head was spinning, either from the painkillers or from shock. Clarence, are you okay? Orville asked with concern. I don't know. I can't believe Verona is capable of this. People do stupid things when they fall in love, especially after a difficult divorce. But to steal her own father's house? Maybe she doesn't fully understand what she's doing. Maybe this Braden guy has messed with her head. We got into Orville's car, an old Ford pickup truck, and drove to my house. On the way, I thought about what to do next. How to talk to my daughter. How to deal with Braden. Should I call the police? Orville, what if I just tell them I know the truth? That's dangerous. If they realize the plan has failed, they may try something else, or they may just disappear. Then what? We need to catch them in the act. Have them bring the documents again and pretend you're ready to sign. But instead of signing, call the police. I don't know. Verona is my daughter, after all. Clarence, she tried to steal your house. The house you and Ruth worked your whole lives for. Orville was right. Sentimentality had no place here. The people closest to me tried to rob me. At home, we put the documents back in Verona's room. Then we sat in the kitchen and thought about a plan of action. Orville suggested various options, from calling the police immediately to trying to talk some sense into Verona. What if we talk to Dexter first, I suggested. Maybe he can influence his sister. We can try, but we need to act quickly. If they sense something is up, they may disappear. Around 5 in the evening, Orville left. We agreed that he would come back tomorrow morning, and we would decide once and for all what to do. In the meantime, I had to act normal and not show that I knew anything. At 6:30, Verona came home. She looked tired but happy. She kissed me on the cheek and asked how I was feeling. How's your arm, Dad? Does it hurt? It's tolerable. How are you? Fine. I had a lot of work, but I got it done. She started making dinner, and I watched her, trying to figure out if she really understood what she was doing or if Braden had completely brainwashed her. Dad, she said, cutting vegetables for a salad, I talked to Richard Stone today. He can come tomorrow evening to draw up all the documents. Tomorrow? Yes, he said we can't wait any longer. The legal situation may change. That's a lie. A professional lawyer would never say such a stupid thing. Will Braden be there? Of course. He introduced us to Richard. So tomorrow evening they're planning their final attack. Well, that gives me time to prepare. All right, I said calmly. Let them come. I'm ready to discuss everything. Verona turned around, a joyful smile on her face. Right, Dad? Do you agree? Yes, you're right. We need to think about the future. She came over and hugged me with her good arm. Thanks, Dad. You won't regret this decision. As I hugged my daughter, I thought about how her world would collapse tomorrow evening, and mine too. Tuesday began with clear skies and a strange feeling of relief. For the first time in 2 weeks since the fall, I woke up with a clear head and a firm decision. Yesterday's conversation with Merritt had put everything in its place. My daughter and her lover were planning to steal my house. Today I had to put an end to it. Verona left for work at the usual time, kissing me goodbye and reminding me of my evening meeting with the lawyer. I nodded and smiled, pretending to be ready to sign the papers. Playing along was unpleasant, but necessary. Don't worry, Dad. It will all be over by tonight, and you'll have peace of mind about your future, she said at the door. Yes, it will all be over, I thought, but said nothing aloud. After she left, I called Orville. We agreed to meet in the morning to discuss a plan of action. My friend arrived around 9, bringing a thermos of coffee and a bag of fresh donuts from Dolly's. "How did you sleep?" he asked, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Bad. I thought about yesterday all night. I can't believe Verona is capable of such a thing. People change when it comes to money. And then there's Braden messing with her head. We discussed various options. Orville suggested calling the police right away, showing them the documents, and reporting attempted fraud. But I hesitated. Verona is my daughter after all, and I didn't want to put her behind bars. "Maybe we should try talking to her nicely first," I suggested. "Explain that I know everything. Give her a chance to reconsider." "Clarence, you're too kind. They've been deceiving you for 2 weeks, planning to steal your house. People go to jail for that. But if she realizes that the plan has failed, maybe she'll give up on it. Or maybe she'll try to coerce you in other ways. Con artists always have backup plans." Orville was right. But my father's heart didn't want to believe the worst. We agreed that I would first try to talk to Verona alone, and if that didn't work, we would call the police. "Just be careful with this Braden," Orville warned. "A convicted felon can be dangerous, especially if you corner him." Around 10 o'clock, Orville left for work. I had time until evening to prepare for the conversation with my daughter. I decided to gather all the evidence, print out information about Braden's criminal record, make copies of documents, and write down Merritt's phone number in case I needed a witness. At 11:30, I drove into town. My arm in a cast made it difficult to drive, but I could manage short distances. First, I stopped by the bank and withdrew some cash from my account, just in case. Then I went to an internet cafe and printed out the materials Merritt had found about Braden. A young woman, a student at a local college, worked at the cafe. She helped me with the printer. It was awkward to press the buttons with my left hand. The documents came out clear. The court decision on the fraud case, a criminal record certificate, and an extract from the debtor's register. It was grim reading. "Grandpa, is this your grandson?" the girl asked, looking at Braden's photo in the court documents. "No," I replied curtly, "just an acquaintance." On the way back, I stopped at the store and bought groceries for a few days. If today ends in scandal, tomorrow may not be a good day for shopping. I got home around noon. As I approached the house, I noticed a familiar blue sedan in the driveway. Braden's car. Strange. He usually came in the evenings when Verona came home from work, but now it was the middle of the day, and she should be at the laundromat. After parking, I quietly walked to the front door. There was music playing in the house. Not loud, but clearly audible. Some modern song I didn't know. I could also hear voices and laughter. So Verona really was home, even though she should be at work. I unlocked the door and entered the hallway. The music was playing in the living room, but there was no one there. The voices were coming from above, from the second floor, from my bedroom. What were they doing there? As I climbed the stairs, I heard sounds that left no doubt about what was happening in my room. A rage rose up in me that I hadn't felt in many years. The last time I was this angry was when I found out about Kyle's betrayal. But this was worse. Kyle was a stranger, and Verona was my own daughter. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open and went in. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice my arrival. "What's going on here?" I shouted. They jumped apart. Verona grabbed the sheet and covered herself. Braden jumped out of bed and backed away toward the window. There was fear in his eyes, but no shame. "Dad!" Verona was pale, her lips trembling. "We didn't expect. You're supposed to be at the laundry." I have the day off today. I forgot to tell you." Braden silently pulled on his underwear, looking around for the rest of his clothes. He acted cocky, but I could see he was afraid. "And you decided to do this in my bedroom? In my bed?" "Dad, we didn't want to upset you." "Upset me?" My voice rose to a shout. "You're going to steal my house, and now you're desecrating my bed." Verona's face contorted with surprise. "What are you talking about? What theft?" "Don't pretend. I know all about your papers. I know that the house isn't supposed to go to you, but to this crook." Braden froze, half-dressed. I saw understanding in his eyes. The plan had been revealed. "Mr. Everett, let's talk calmly." "Shut up," I barked. "I don't want to hear a word from you." I left the bedroom and went into the next room, where there was an old wardrobe. In the far corner, behind the winter coats, was a hunting rifle. A double-barreled shotgun that I had bought 20 years ago, but had hardly ever used. Ruth didn't like hunting, and after her death, I somehow lost interest in it. It was difficult to reach the gun with my left hand, but my rage gave me strength. I checked. Both barrels were loaded. The cartridges were old, but they should fire. I returned to the bedroom. Braden had already put on his jeans and was looking for a shirt. Verona sat on the bed wrapped in a sheet, her eyes full of tears. "Dad, what are you doing? Why do you need a gun?" I raised the double-barreled shotgun and pointed it at the ceiling. "Get out of my house!" I shouted at Braden. "Now! Hey, hey, take it easy!" He raised his hands. "No one's going to hurt anyone. I'm counting to 3. 1. Mr. Everett, let's not do anything stupid. 2. Braden rushed to the window. The bedroom window overlooked the backyard, second floor, 4 meters high. But the guy apparently decided it was better than staying next to an angry old man with a gun. 3. I pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening. Plaster fell from the ceiling. There was a smell of gunpowder. Verona screamed. Braden didn't wait for the second shot. He threw open the window and jumped out. He landed awkwardly on the lawn, rolled over, jumped up, and ran across the backyard to the neighbor's property. He was running in just his jeans, barefoot. He hadn't found his shirt. I went to the window and watched him disappear behind the miller's fence. He runs well for an unemployed man. He must have experience. This isn't the first time he's run away from angry owners. "Dad, you're crazy," Verona sobbed. "You could have killed him." "I could have, but I didn't. Although I really wanted to." I put the gun in the corner and sat down in the chair by the window. My hand hurt from the recoil, but it didn't matter. The main thing was that I got rid of that parasite. "Get dressed," I said to Verona. "We need to talk." She pulled on the robe that was hanging on the back of the chair. Her face was red from crying. Her hair was tousled. She looked pitiful, but I felt no pity. "Sit down," I pointed to the edge of the bed. She sat down, clasping her hands on her knees. "Dad, I can explain everything." "Explain. Explain how you were going to steal my house." "I wasn't going to steal it. I wanted to help you." "Help?" I took the printouts I had made that morning out of my pocket. "Here's some information about your friend. A criminal record for fraud, several civil lawsuits, professional con artist." Verona took the papers with trembling hands and began to read. Her face grew paler and paler. "That can't be. Braden isn't like that. And this," I showed her a photocopy of the documents, "is a deed of gift. See who the house is being transferred to? Not to you. To Braden Daniel Ripple, your crooked lover. But he said it was for my protection. He told you a lot of things, and you believed him. You believed a stranger more than your own father." Verona read the documents, tears dripping onto the paper. "I didn't know. He said the lawyer had made a mistake, that everything would be corrected later. You're lying. You knew perfectly well that you were deceiving me. You spent 2 weeks persuading me to sign the papers. You wouldn't let me read them." "Dad, Shut up," I shouted. "Enough of your lies. You were going to take away the house that your mother and I built over 30 years, for some scoundrel you've known for a month. I love him." "Love him?" "He's using you, just like he used that woman in Casper. And you fool, you're falling for his fairy tales." Verona sobbed, rocking back and forth. "What am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? That's not my problem. You should have thought about that when you planned to rob your father. Dad, I'm sorry. I've done some stupid things. But I'm your daughter." "Daughter?" I looked at her with disgust. "A daughter doesn't steal from her father. A daughter doesn't bring crooks into her parents' house. A daughter doesn't engage in debauchery in her dead mother's bed." The last words hit her harder than a slap. She cringed and covered her face with her hands. "Pack your things," I said calmly. "I'll give you an hour. Pack a suitcase and leave. Dad, don't kick me out. I have nowhere to go. Go to your Braden, since he's more important to you than your family. But where can I find him?" He ran away. "You'll find him. Con artists always have backup hideouts. What if I don't find him? Then you'll learn to live on your own. You're 28 years old, it's time." Verona stood up and walked to the door. She turned around on the threshold. Dad, if I leave now, will you ever forgive me? I thought for a few seconds. I don't know. Maybe. If you realize what you've done. If you truly repent, and in the meantime, get out of my house. And don't come back until you've come to your senses. She went upstairs to her room. I stayed in the bedroom, cleaning up the plaster that had fallen from the shot. There was a fist-sized hole in the ceiling. I'd have to fix it, but that was a minor detail. The main thing was that I had gotten rid of the parasites. I spent the next hour in the living room, listening to Verona walking around her room, packing her things. Sometimes I could hear her sobbing, but I didn't go up to her. Pity is a bad advisor in such matters. Around 4 o'clock, she came down with 2 large bags, clothes, cosmetics, documents, everything she could carry. She left the rest behind. I've packed, she said quietly. The keys. She took a bunch of keys out of her pocket. For the house, the car, the laundry. She put them on the table in the hallway. I'm leaving the car. It's registered in your name. I nodded. I bought the car when she got a job at the laundry. Do you have any money? A little. Enough for a few days. She picked up her bags and walked to the door. She stopped without turning around. Dad, I really didn't mean to hurt you. It's just, I loved him so much. Go, I said, and remember this house will always be your home, but only when you become my daughter, not an accomplice to crooks. She left, closing the door behind her. I went to the window and watched her walk down the street with her heavy bags, a small, lonely figure on an empty road. My heart ached, but I held back. Some lessons can only be learned through pain. Orville called in the evening. How's it going? Did you talk to your daughter? I did. I kicked her out of the house. Seriously? How did she take it? Badly. But there was no other way. And that Braden guy? He jumped out the window and ran away when I fired a shot into the ceiling. You shot? I had to. I caught them in my bed. Orville whistled. You're something else, old man. Are you going to call the police? I don't know yet. Maybe they'll disappear on their own when they realize the plan has failed. Or maybe they'll try something else. Be careful. But they never showed up again. Neither Verona nor Braden. The house became quiet and empty, like in the first months after Ruth's death. Only then the emptiness was from grief, and now it was from disappointment.